Hey, what's happening? Welcome to the Pleasure Points podcast. I'm your host, James Rohr. Today's episode, we're going to talk about how to handle disagreements and speaking the truth to yourself. So fasten your seatbelts, buckle in. This is a good one. I basically just pulled some highlights from my coaching program. So I think that if you are somebody who is in a relationship or looking for a relationship, this information today is going to be highly relevant. So thank you for being here. You can hit me up at pleasurepointspodcast@gmail.com. Follow me on Instagram at James E. Rohr, and enjoy the show. All right, so this week I'm taking a break from TikTok. Have you guys used TikTok before? I had a funny thing. This a friend of mine from New York came down to Miami a few weeks ago and asked if I wanted to play golf, and all of our exchanges were going back and forth on Instagram Messenger. And he's like, I don't know, he's like 50 something, 52 maybe, and I'm 40 now. And we were joking at the end. He's like, it was funny that a couple old guys, like all of our communication was on Instagram. That basically means that Instagram is dead and, probably has been dead to young people for a while. And that same night, Jen was like, she was watching these videos on TikTok, and I was like, what the fuck is TikTok? And like, if you haven't been on it, it's apparently where all of the high school and college kids are now. But it's funny because there's like also a smattering of older people making their own videos and talking about like how they're old on TikTok. I'm probably sounding incredibly old to people that know about these things. And I'm like, oh, this thing called the TikTok. But it's like insanely addictive to just watch people doing like these like ridiculous videos. So Jen obviously has an account now, and but her account is focused on the cat. We're making videos of Siegfried doing crazy things. So I called my brother, who's got a couple of teenagers or one's a teen, I think one's preteen. I was like, hey, do you know about TikTok? And he was just like, I don't get it, but they're on it all day long. So I'm real proud to say that Jen and I have spent way more time on TikTok than we probably ever should have. But it's been a great source of laughter and fun. And it's making me think that I should learn how to dance, because it's like a lot of dance tutorials. And I don't know if it's just like the people that are on there, like, are dancers who are like, I'm going to film myself dancing, or if like this generation is like they just did more dancing, really kind of stylized shit. But stay tuned, and perhaps I can get Jen and I to post like a horrible video of us trying to dance. I know you'll all be waiting with bated breath for that one. So I wanted to interrupt our TikTok viewing to pop on here and to share some things that happened in my coaching program, because we had a couple of really powerful calls recently, and I thought it would be worthwhile to some of you to hear what's going on back there. So one of the first things, I've been talking a lot about like suffering and attachments and exploring these ideas, but, like for sure, it's very clear that, unmet expectations are like the root of all unhappiness. I mean, if you're expecting something to happen and it doesn't, that can create all sorts of heartache and distress and pain and turmoil and all this. But I had one of my clients like echoed back to me things that I love to say over and over again. And she was like, I've heard it, but like I felt it, like I was having this experience with this guy that she's starting to see. And she was like, and I felt the words that you have been saying, which is, one of the things that I like to remind everybody, and especially my clients and myself too, for that matter. She said, she was like, she's like, I was talking to him and I was like, I noticed this like anxiety that was arising within me. And I said, he might break up with you. He might dump you. This might end in heartache. And she said, and then I watched myself say to myself, and that's totally okay. If that happens, I will be okay. I've been through a lot before. I can handle it. And this happened over the phone, so she couldn't see me like thrusting my arms in the air, like full of excitement, because that's like everything, right? So when someone who's been dealing with a lot of relationship anxiety can get to that place where like she gets out of that place of fear and is totally honest with herself, like that is everything. That was awesome. And I like to, I remind my clients of this often because it's super important. Because listen, I think our body knows when we're telling ourselves the truth. There's like, there's something you may have heard or experienced before, like the truth response. Your shoulders might relax. You might start crying, like everything softens. Like the body knows the truth. When I was thinking about what I was going to do when I was graduating undergrad, when I was graduating college, I made a list of all of the options, and I was like, I'm going to be a cowboy, or maybe I'll go to like business school, or I'm going to move back home. I'm going to, hike in whatever, some mountains or something. And at the very bottom of that list was acupuncture school. And I read through the list out loud, like to myself. And I was just noticing like how it felt. I was like, well, how is this gonna, like, what does this feel like when I say it? I'm like, oh, like I'm Jim. This is what I'm gonna do next. And everything was like, it was fine. It was like sort of everything, for the most part, things were neutral. Like some things, like I felt a little tight, but it was mostly neutral. But I can't even say that like I was that aware of those other things until I got to acupuncture school. And what happened was when I was like, I'm gonna go to acupuncture school. And I said that out loud. And like my shoulders softened. I took a huge deep breath. Everything in me just like relaxed. And then my next thought was like, oh shit, because I didn't really want to go to acupuncture school. It's a lot of time, money. It's like going to be a lot of things, and I was like, I didn't really want to be in more school. And so, like a lot of people do when they get a message that they don't really want to hear, I just was like, well, maybe it's a false reading. Maybe that's not exactly what's happening here. So I read the list again and again and again, hoping, praying, wishing for a different result. And yet every time, like my body relaxed, it just knew that like this was the thing. And sure enough, I followed it. I was in acupuncture school. And when I was in acupuncture school, I was hearing things and it all just felt familiar. There was like a familiarity there that was comforting at the time. It made certain parts of acupuncture school a lot easier because it felt like instead of like I had to cram this knowledge in, it felt like it was more just about allowing it to come out, like it was already in me, like my hands already knew, kind of where to go. And like there was just something very natural to me about it, which was great. And so, but it all started with that truth response. And so I think that our bodies, like they know when we're telling ourselves the truth. And for somebody who, in my experience, has been anxious, like it might be tempting to try to convince ourselves of lies or of, things that we hope to be true to try to get ourselves to feel better. But that's a house of cards. It's not sustainable. And so, kind of like being willing to look at the truth, like face on, where it's like, yes, this guy might be totally amazing right now, or this woman, like whatever, your partner, this person you're into, might be amazing. And they might also turn out to be horrible, and they might completely break your heart. The chances are very, very high that one of you will be left feeling very alone. All things, like if things are good, right? Maybe it's just somebody dies. If things are great, maybe you die together and it doesn't happen and everything's happy and wonderful and amazing. But the odds are going to be that one of you is going to die, assuming that, the relationship continues well. One of you is going to die. The other one's going to be alone, or having to deal with the grief of that or whatever. And then certainly when it comes to the dating, before you're even in a committed thing, right? There's all sorts of other shit that can happen. So like to just be totally honest with yourself and to be like, yes, this could completely unravel in ways that I can't even foresee right now or expect. You don't have to go through naming them, right? We don't need to put that energy out there, but to just be brutally honest with yourself. The ultimate version of this is obviously with death. A lot of people, I think, just sort of walk around like not paying attention to it, not thinking about it, like whatever. But like it's coming for all of us. We don't get out of here alive. And so what we do with that knowledge, what we do with that awareness is everything. That's where like the gold comes in. That's where everything gets to be transformative, if you will. Like, so knowing that this person might leave, that they could leave, they have the potential to do horrible things. What does that do for this moment that's happening right now? Does it free you up? Does it allow us to be kinder? Does it allow us to enter into the moment with a little more grace and a little more appreciation? Because when we admit to ourselves that there's no amount of coercing, of fighting, of manipulating, of conniving that's going to, be able to yield the kind of loving partnership that you want, well, then we're just left with, well, okay. So I need to create a great environment around me and inside of me that loves myself and that is also, loving of others. And that is a fertile sort of soil for a great relationship to blossom. And like, that's the truth of it. And so, when this client was saying that she had that thought, I was just so excited for her, because it's a great indication that she's broken free of some of that conditioning of the anxiety, saying that, she needs this person to fill this like huge hole, this huge wound that she might have. And instead, she's just like, no, she's aligning with herself. And she's like, I know I'm going to be okay. In fact, I'll be better than okay, because that's what I'm going to choose to create in my life. And if this person chooses to leave, then so be it. And if they, do like things, if they treat me poorly, like I hope they don't, but if they do, like I'll handle it. And, there was just something so liberating about that, because one of the things that trips up people in relationships, especially those with anxiousness. So you guys are familiar with, the attachment styles? So basically, how we relate to others that can be like our attachment style. So basically it's like there's anxious attachment, there's secure attachment, and there's avoidant. There's other subsets, but these are the big ones. And so oftentimes anxious people will be attracted to avoidant people because the avoidance, will like be distant, and then the anxious person's like their mission is to get someone who's distant to like stay and to love them. And so, they're attracted to like repeat these patterns over and over again. But so one of the things that we know is that in relationships, like people that are anxious and avoidant, they tend to be really, really bad at handling disagreements. That their arguments and their disagreements tend to be fraught with challenges and difficulties. Because there's lots of reasons why, but so one of the main skill sets that I encourage my clients to focus and to work on when they get into a relationship is, how do you disagree? How do you handle the argument? Because oftentimes somebody who's anxious might be really pushing for resolution, or the disagreement might come in the first place because they are feeling this person pulling away. And so they're picking a fight, trying to get some attention, to get some engagement, to get a rise out of this person. In the book Attached, they'll call it in like an act of protest or protest behaviors. They're protesting like what's been going on, and they want to get a rise. They want to get something, right? So a lot of times, part of why they handle disagreement so poorly is because the foundation of the disagreement is on some bullshit. They're not actually just saying, hey, like, I'm aware that I feel like scared and afraid and whatever, and I haven't heard from you in a while. And so, instead they're picking a fight about like a comment or something that they saw on the internet, or, the dishes not being put away, like whatever. And so, being able to argue or to handle disagreements in a better way is going to make a big, 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 big difference in the quality of the relationship and how the relationship can grow. There's an interesting book that I read a few years ago called, I think it's called The Dance of the Lion and the Unicorn. And basically what it says is that the lion is, so in every relationship, there tends to be a lion and there tends to be a unicorn. And so the lion in this case is someone who, when there is uncertainty, when there's a disagreement, when there's dis-ease, when there's turmoil, the lion wants to charge at it head on, and they want the resolution. They want to talk things out. They want full participation. They want to get it sorted out as quick as possible. So this person's they can't just leave things alone for a bit. They have to keep addressing it. And then the unicorn wants to stay kind of a dark, mysterious unicorn, not bring everything into the light. And so they like to just kind of leave things and run away and go hide in the corner and just sort of wait for everything to sort of magically resolve on its own, so that they don't actually have to talk about their feelings. Can you guess which one which one I've been? I my last name is Roar, for Christ's sake. I'm getting after it here. So, so what happens in these relationships is you tend to have the lion and the unicorn, and that can create all sorts of conflict. Even there's conflict about how they handle conflict, right? And so part of the work then is for the lion in this case to be able to chill out, to be able to allow things to breathe, to allow for there to be some uncertainty, to not necessarily have to rush to get conclusions, at every little thing. And then the job for the unicorn, the way for them to argue better or to handle disagreements better is they've got to, be willing to kind of sit and to converse and to talk things out and to be able to share how they're feeling. And so it's it's a give and a take on both of those sides. Instead of actually getting to the heart of the matter and addressing what is what really needs to be discussed, what happens there is we just keep triggering these old patterns, right? And so somebody who is anxious, they're going to get angry, they're going to get frustrated, they might start yelling, they might start, craving connection and closeness and wanting this person to, participate in some intimacy. And then the other person is just running away. And so the anxious person is completely triggered, right? And they're pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. And then the avoidant person is oh, I've been smothered before. I don't want to be trapped. I got to get away. I got to get away. Got to get away. And so the more that person keeps, leaning in, the more they start pulling away. And so what happens here is that, this can create all sorts of amazing, what seems to be chemistry, but it's not the healthy chemistry. It's just repeating these old patterns and these cycles of being in this same loop over and over and over again. And so part of the way to break that pattern is, for someone who's anxious to be a little bit more comfortable with things being uncertain. And part of the way that we can handle uncertainty is to have a tremendous ability to self-soothe. And part of the way that we self-soothe is going to be being able to, have that trust that you will not betray yourself, that you'll stay connected to your heart, that you'll come back to your alignment, that you'll tap into your best self, no matter what's happening around you. And when we have that ability to soothe and we could reaffirm our commitment to ourselves and to bringing out our purpose, whatever your purpose might be. In my case, to be kind and to consider it, to bring a good mood. That when you can do that, then all of a sudden, if somebody that you love needs to pull away for a bit, we might be able to handle that with some compassion. Oh, this person, okay, something's going on. They need a little bit of space. Can I breathe into this? Can I return my focus from them and needing something from them, and then come back and nurture myself? And then from that place of wholeness and of connection with yourself, the tone, the conversation, everything about it starts to change. And part of what it does is like one of Jen's friends said a while ago, she's been married. They've been married for a long time, and they've been through like some really challenging times. And she said this great line, which was like, anytime that we fought or argued or were in a tough place, she said, I never thought to myself, if we make it through this together. She said it was always just a matter of when. It might be later today, it might be tomorrow, it might be in 6 months, but when we make it through it, and having that kind of certainty was huge. You think that he didn't feel that certainty when he wasn't feeling good? On some level, I'm sure he recognized that and he felt that coming from her. And when it comes to, the relationships, if you've had the relationship for a while, you might experiment with that certainty and see how it goes, knowing full well that, that person, you can't control their behavior. But isn't it nice if you're in a committed relationship to hold that certainty of when we get through this? And then perhaps there doesn't have to be that urgency for somebody who's anxious. And in the beginning, this is true for all phases of relationships as far as I can tell, but especially in the beginning, when you may not even be in a committed relationship yet, you might not even have that committed partner. So all the more reason that like, when you're like, no matter what happens with that person, I will always be in a good relationship with myself. I am committed to walking the good road. I'm committed to sitting in this sacred fire with all of my relations around me. And I will not step away from this fire no matter what. And when you have that kind of commitment and that connection to yourself, it's just the entire tone and the way you relate to others is going to be very, very, very different. Because when we are in the anxious, or if you have that avoidant tendency, if you keep yearning and yearning and yearning for somebody to fix you, or to make reparations for the sins of other people in your life, that just isn't going to go well. But when you can come back home to yourself and to soothe and to nurture yourself, then when it comes time to share your feelings, right? We're not necessarily like lost in a sea of, picking a fight just to pick a fight. Instead, we can actually share what's going on, which is like, hey, I'm actually feeling fairly terrified here. Or like, I didn't like what was going on. Can we talk about it? And then you get to share. You get to share how you like to be, related to and what that looks like. And at the end of the day, it's when it comes to relationships and arguments. Can you guys hear that? That's Jen listening to TikTok. I don't know if the mics picked that up. It's just not stopping around the house right now. At the end of the day, with relationships, like I think disagreements are actually a pretty healthy sign, and when I hear or meet couples and like, we never fight, it's like, well, someone's not telling the truth. I believe they're not fighting, but someone's they're not being honest with their partner, because fighting and disagreement is totally normal. And it's really healthy, but it's how the disagreements are handled, and if we come back to kindness, if we come back to consideration, and if you're actually using it as a tool for intimacy, then, it's like there's so much more opportunity for growth. But if we're stuck in these anxious patterns, or if we're stuck in just wanting to run away from our feelings, then it's going to be very, very hard to handle those disagreements in a good way. And ultimately, it comes back again to that ability to self-soothe. And part of that self-soothing means being brutally honest with yourself, to not try to deceive yourself or to lie to yourself about what is or isn't happening. Isn't it like 12 steps? The first step is like admitting you have a problem, and it's sometimes our truth is like that. Sometimes it is like a 12-step thing, but other times it's just about saying like, yeah, this person might leave. And the thought of that might be terrifying. And that's okay that that's terrifying. There's an opportunity here for you to relate to yourself in a slightly different way. but to not try to deceive yourself or put yourself to sleep by saying that that person will never leave, that person's never going to hurt you, they would never do this to you, because every single one of us is capable of some horrible things. And the beauty is that then, when we're not doing horrible things, it's because we've chosen to be kind. And there's that opportunity to continue to choose to show up in a good way, to choose to show up in a form of appreciation. And when we know going into a disagreement that that person is not beholden to us, even if they are married to us, they're not beholden to us. They don't have to sit there and, listen to all of our bullshit. They don't even have to sit there and care about a healthy conclusion to an argument or disagreement. They may even disagree with the fact that there's a disagreement. And yet when we know that that person can get up and go, or that they can leave, or that they can hurt you, then maybe that the brutal reality of that will be the thing that gives you that opportunity to come from even more kindness and compassion. And to come from a place of like, wow, this person is sitting here by, the grace of the universe and the grace of their choices to sit here, and we have an opportunity to connect. I'm basically at this point talking to myself like, if I could go back and, give myself some advice when I was married the first time. It's like, this is what I would say again. I don't think it would change the final outcome, but the process of that could have been very different. But I wasn't in that place. I was honestly, I was too anxious. I was too worried about, our future and what was happening and some of the choices and stuff. And so, it's like, it took getting separated and then, going through my own healing and the process after that. And then certainly seeing what's capable with Jen and putting that in the new stuff into action has been tremendous. But I don't take any of that stuff for granted. It's every moment is an opportunity, because we know that, that person could hurt us, that death is going to come for us at some point. And so how about we just do our best to rejoice in the gratefulness of this moment, in the miracle that is your life, the miracle that is your heartbeat, the miracle that is every opportunity to breathe and to speak. So thank you guys as always for being here, for the feedback. And I love it when you guys write in pleasurepointspodcast@gmail.com. Hit me up on Instagram @JamesERoar. And, we'll just keep it going. If you do find yourself in a disagreement, see if you can check in with yourself first. Maybe ask yourself, okay, what am I really feeling? What's underneath this? Chances are it's probably some version of fear. And then you can ask yourself, okay, what can I do to soothe myself in this moment? Gratitude is a big, big part of it. What can you be grateful for? And then looking at that person across from you that you're having a disagreement with, what can you be grateful for about them? Find something. All right, what can you be grateful for about them? And then speak your truth. What is that? Speak your truth, Jesus. That's like a whole other thing. Just open your heart. Open your heart and be kind, and then see what happens. So have a phenomenal week. I can't wait to hear how this works out for you guys, and I'll catch you guys next time.